Hello, my name is Emmanuel Daniel. I run the Asian Banker, as some of you may be familiar with me, and I want to spend this few minutes to quickly describe to you what we wish to achieve at the Risk Games Conference at the forthcoming Asian Banker Summit, which is going to be held in Jakarta, Indonesia, on the 23rd to 25th of April. The Risk Games Conference is a 3-day conference, and each of those 3 days we will be running a simulation exercise, and we want to make it as interactive as possible. This briefing is for all of you who are attending as speakers, as panelists, as delegates, as participants in the simulation program, as well as I want to reach out to those of you in risk, credit, treasury, trading, and even the finance function in your respective banks, where you have a risk responsibility or you contribute to the overall risk framework and the risk culture in your respective banks. In fact, I would even reach out to board members who needs to get a hands-on feel of what risk management is about. Um, you might want to take a look at our website, the asianbanker.com, where we have a whole program around risk and regulation called the Risk and Regulation Working Group. We've been in the business of documenting all of the emerging best practices that are evolving in what you've been doing in your respective banks. We build our own matrices by which we look at how you run your risk management function, and try to identify benchmarks that we can use and learn from each other on an ongoing basis. Right now, I want to brief you very quickly as to why we designed the Risk Games Conference, how it will work, and what you'll get out of it. At the top of it, if you looked at the website, theasianbanker.com, and looked at the risk management or risk games conference, you'll see that it essentially looks like a traditional conference with a whole host of very good speakers from around the world. I would categorize our speakers as being some of the best regulators, um, university professors, academics, world-class academics from the U.S., from Europe, from Asia, as well as people in risk management functions. So it's not just heads of risk management, but people responsible for liquidity management, responsible for the finance function, and credit risk management, and so on. We want to create a conference where the whole ecosystem is interacting with each other. And I think we've done that in terms of the quality and the range of the different speakers that we have. Why did we organize the Risk Games Conference? Uh, the, the thinking is like this. Traditional risk management conference, firstly, there are too many of them. They're mostly talking shops. And on top of that, as a person in the risk management function in your respective banks, you would have, on a normal day, any number of meetings with your regulators, with your peers, within your bank, and so on. We needed a conference where we could take the value of meeting to another level, which you would not traditionally get in the job that you already do. And the other thing that went into the thinking of this Risk Games conference is very simply a good risk management team. We are in the business of evaluating you for awards program and so on. When you think about it, recognizing a good risk management team just because nothing happened is quite straightforward. What we want to do is to inculcate a culture, just like the fire station culture, where a good fire station is one which is constantly testing itself against scenarios, constantly having trial runs, and constantly matching themselves against peers, and so on. So the idea is to be robust and dynamic in the way we think about what a good risk management capability means in a bank. So we design a risk management conference where people in the risk functions can test their thoughts, test their ideas, test their skills with each other. The primary component of the objectives of this conference essentially, and I want to especially tell our speakers this, is to address the industry at a practical implementation level. So it's not so much, the big themes on Basel III, for example, and how that's being mapped out at a global level, but what's the implication for a large Asian bank, for a small Asian bank, for a bank in a large country, for a bank in a slow-growing country, and what are the practical difficulties that people in risk functions have in all of these different scenarios. So I would like our speakers and our panelists to think about the practical implementation issues that they are dealing with, and we want them to discuss at a human level, at a practical level, not too much at a conceptual level. And we want to provide our delegates with the opportunity to interact and test the ideas with peers. All of us know that the Basel III liquidity requirements, it is already on a timetable, and the timetable is ticking away. All of us are working towards building our own liquidity framework and so on. And so we want a little bit of that to be in the conference. What I've done here is to put together some photographs which will give you a visual representation of what the conference should look like. And these photographs are all from our previous conferences and trainings that we've done. So it's not like we're doing it for the first time, but we want to visualize it in a way that that you can already prepare for the conference. I want you to look at especially this particular picture where, and this is not our event, but basically where the speaker is very close and interacting very cozily with the audience, and we want to create that sort of environment at the Risk Games conference. What will it look like? Now, every day of the 3 days that you attend the risk-based conference, you will be given one simulation exercise. We're working with a university, a very good university in Belgium called Blerick Business School, and with Professor Andre Thibault, who actually designed this program. And conceptually, if you look at it, it's essentially that we will all be looking at traditional banks' income statement and the balance sheet that results from that income statement, and the things that you need to do on the capital front to ensure that the balance sheet is able to sustain the kind of income and expenses that a bank has and the kind of portfolio it has on the asset and liability side of its business. So the major decisions that you'll be making revolves everything that you're familiar with: credit risk, liquidity risk, interest rate, operational risk, solvency issues, and keeping in mind that regardless of what risk function that you have, your goal, as is the goal of the CEO and the board, is to maintain the profitability and the market acceptance of the bank that you're running. And you will each be given groups, and each group will be running specific banks. And we hope that some of our speakers will also participate as delegates, so that we can see the robustness of the thinking in terms of responding to challenges. So imagine this conference where for most of the morning we have very specific sessions, and then we break into a risk simulation exercise. And in the risk simulation exercise, you will be grouped into management groups. We hope that it will be 4 to 5 people in a group, and there are 3 decisions to be made, one each day, and then you have a decision sheet. Before we start any of our decisions, the academics will give us a conceptual clarity in terms of the decisions that you're going to be making. So they'll set the context for us in the 3 areas that we will be looking at. We will be discussing maybe 7 to 8 different things, but only 3 of those areas will come under the simulation exercises. The rest of them will be discussed as normal panel discussions during the conference. Now, what we call a game is really a lot to do with learning and discussing by doing together. Now, most of these, the 3 of these photographs are from simulation sessions that we at the Asian Banker have been running in different areas of what we do. So the Asian Banker Summit Risk Games Conference is really the culmination of how we've been learning how to do simulations and how to make sure that large groups of people benefit from interacting with each other. How are the decisions taken? You'll be given a financial statement, you'll be given a period, and then you start setting out your own mission statement and your own goals that you want to achieve. You'll be given a forecast worksheet. You work out the assets, liability, the capital ratios, and so on. And this is what a worksheet looks like when you look into the software provided by Blerick University, and you put in your forecast, and from your forecast, the system generates your delta, and from there looks at how you look like relative to other competitors in the marketplace. You work out your own capital requirements and capital ratio, meeting those ratios, and then the system works out for you the dynamic gap and so on. And then you finally come onto an online decision sheet, and from there you generate your own reports and your own financial statements, and discuss it with your team as to how that looks like. The system itself will provide all of the environmental factors that you need to look at. It will give you the kind of securities that you can play with in order to show up your balance sheet. You look at your own liquidity issues on the cash front, on the government securities front. We try to keep the assets available for capital management simple, so that all of us are looking at the same things regardless of the different countries that we come from. You look at your assets and your liabilities. All banks in these fictitious banks that are created for this program start with being BB grade rated, and then you work out your capital requirements and the supply of funds that you are dealing with in order to reach your objectives. And your objectives are your own objectives in that sense. So as I said, each day we will do one quarter. We will look at the trading book. We'll look at liquidity, capital, and funding, and then we'll look at risk appetite of the institution and how close you can get to your risk objectives of your institution, and that's it. So we try to keep it as simple as possible, so that the simulation itself doesn't get into the way of very quick and very deep and very interactive learning. There will be ushers ready to help you. So don't think that you're coming for this conference and that you'll be required to learn a software you're not familiar with and so on. There'll be guidance given at all points. And after you've made your submissions, the people running the solution will come up with the reports, and the reports will look like this, and we will start comparing how each of the banks look like relative to each other on a whole host of parameters: leverage, profits, yield, liquidity, and so on. And there's a whole lot of conversations that we're going to hold or going to have by looking at all of these things in as interactive a manner as possible. We want you to talk. We want you to, as a participant, to come up and say, this is why I took the position that I did, or this is why my team took the position that it did, and this is what our thinking is, and then to defend as to why you're rated the way you are on the liquidity front, on the adequacy front, and so on, and what you look like relative to your competitors. So there's a very strong element of testing your own ideas and seeing whether it stands relative to others. Now, the overall agenda, including the risk component, the simulation component, will cover a whole range of things. I looked at the overall agenda and I sort of encapsulated it into all of these areas: capital funding, liquidity risk, trading book and market risk, cross-border credit book and assets, especially today with the CVA requirement in Basel III. ICAP and internal measurements. I know that some banks, especially from the countries where you're still developing your internal rating tools, it's a discussion that you want to have in an international environment and see which banks are further down the road than you are. Now, the other two elements in there, which has a lot to do with culture and the role of the CRO, especially as it's been only a few years since the CRO or the role of CRO has matured, and how that interacts with the role of the CFO, the role of the head of treasury, and the role of the credit risk managers, to ensure that a bank is not just meeting its risk management objectives, but also being profitable and sustainable on an ongoing basis. We'll keep it and make it look fun. So we'll have a whole wall called the Big Brain Map, where a fun person will be building the entire dialogue into a visual expression, so that at the end of the 3-day conference, we can sort of look at where we've been to and what we've discussed, and how it all holds together, and maybe even take a photograph and have a visual representation in our minds. Of course, most important of all, that we'll make lots of friends at this conference. I hope that those of you who have not signed up for the summit and for the Risk Games conference will sign up. Come either as individuals or as teams of four to benefit from this conference. Come with an open mind. Come to learn. And if you have any questions, please contact Janice Chua at jchua@theasianbanker.com or call her in Singapore at 6236-6532 or visit our website at theasianbanker.com. I look forward to an exciting time together. This probably will be the most interactive conference of its kind to be held in the risk management space. Thank you very much for listening to this briefing.